Hi, I'm Rick DiClemente with Astrology Unplugged. Seems like lately we're doing less and less astrology, but who cares? We'll do astrology some nights we'll do other topics. We're having fun with people all over the country. And if you want to join us on Thursday nights instead of watching the replay on Friday on YouTube, you can go to starself.com/unplugged to get the links on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. Tonight's subject is the very important topic of surrender. This is a subject I've been very, very heavily interested in for at least 50 years. It's not an easy thing to do. I've picked a bunch of books. I'm going to show you that list and go over them with you because in one way or another they have to do with surrender. Now, I'm not talking about the negative connotation that comes with that word, which is I give up, you win. I'm not talking about that kind of surrender. I'm talking about the kind of surrender where you stop listening to yourself and you start listening to him or her or it. All commonly known as God's will. Very difficult subject, and we're going to talk a lot about it because I've been digging deep, and it leads to, in my mind, the final cliff with spiritual learning, and that cliff is the absolution of the self, the going beyond the sense of self into the sense of oneness. And it's real easy to talk about, and it's real hard to do, and it's real hard to conceive. And I've been fighting a long time to understand, and I think I'm starting to make some progress. Tonight we're going to be doing most of our reading and references from this phenomenal book, very underrated, by a Puerto Rican man named Nick Arandes, and the book is called What Happens When You Let Go, or What Happens When You Let God. The book is, you can tell he wrote it very fast. I know Karen's got it. I'm very glad. I know Janice has read it too. I like the guy so much, he wrote it and he says, I'm not going to fix my mistakes. He said, I'm not an author. I'm putting this down so you'll have the information. No pretenses. He's a Virgo. He's really, really personable. I've befriended him on Facebook. He answers your questions. Unfortunately, he talks really fast and mostly in Spanish. He's got some wonderful YouTube videos. Most of them are in Spanish, and the ones in their English are hard to follow because he talks so fast. He's just brilliant. Anyhow, we're going to talk a lot about this book because this is the book of all the books I have that will do the most for you to teach you about how to surrender, what happens when you surrender, etc. Hi, Ginger. We're going to get into that very heavily. I hope the book finds its way. There are only 3 comments on Amazon about it. The book should be millions and millions of sales. It is not published well, and unfortunately, he used to be a comedian, and he insists on putting some of his jokes in the book, and the jokes aren't that good. But the real talk about what he's talking about is just superb. The man is a Course in Miracles expert. He's given up recording and performing and mostly travels the world, mostly in South America, talking about the Course. And what put him on track was when he read the book called The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. They're all connected. I want you to give me plenty of breaks tonight because this is not a simple subject. We're going to talk about these things and try to detail. And then as you can see, I've got a lot of notes to be read directly from that book. And if there's anybody in my mind in these books that is in second place, or first or second, and as far as the theme of surrender, it's definitely David Hawkins and his books. And we've just lost David at the age of 84, I guess maybe 4 years ago. Hawkins, with the brilliant understanding of the universe, just astounding. Arandes, with the day-to-day, how do you do it? Other people, they have different mentions of it. And what we're talking about, of course, is surrender. Now, I know most of you, I think probably all of us, have our daily struggles. We get strained. We're in the future. We're in the past. We're trying to get there. We're trying to keep our cool. And some of these people write about techniques, write about methods, write about mindsets to where you're living more and more in the present. And when you live in the present, now we're talking like Eckhart Tolle in his book, The New Earth. You can't really spend time in the past or the future because you're so much in the present. But the idea is to come into the present with your consciousness and be okay with everything around you. And that saying that goes, you will be okay, everything will be okay once you're okay with everything. Easy to say, but really with all these techniques, what we're talking about is not losing your cool. That's the surface level. That's the surface level so you don't get agitated and annoyed. The deeper level is when you start to transcend the self and you go into deeper levels and you find out there's a higher self inside you that's already sitting there waiting that they call heaven. The Disappearance of the Universe is on YouTube, definitely, and he's got follow-up books, 2 or 3 after that. But anyhow, we're going to be talking about 2 levels of things. One, the surface level to keep from being agitated, and then you see people like the Dalai Lama, and no matter how you talk to him, he's just always level, and he's always loving, and he's always nice and smooth, and that's no small task. The deeper levels are tremendously detailed and described by David Hawkins, the genius. PhD from New York City, a psychiatrist. I will put this graphic up for you. Share the screen. Okay, we're going to talk about these books. There's no real particular order. I just put these up, and of course you could add thousands of books to this list, but these are really, really critical. What is so good about What Happens When You Let Go and What Happens When You Let God by Nick Arandes, what's so great about it is he really makes the Course in Miracles sound simple. The Course is extremely complicated. It is extremely intellectually complicated. So I just got with a group called A Course of Love, not A Course in Miracles. Another group is called A Course of Love by Marie Perron. Marie, M-A-R-I, P-E-R-R-O-N. And I got with them and I went through a 10-week course with them. And the reason being, I'll keep it simple, is that that was an attempt for the Course to be retranslated by Jesus to us, rechanneled, but with an emotional basis instead of the intellectual basis. Well, I'm sorry, because when I got done with it, I was emotionally worn out and I quit. Because it talked about being an emotional basis, but it still was so heavily intellectual. And the Course was so much, you can't do this, and you haven't done this, and you've not achieved this, and if you did this, you would have that, and I felt battered. I felt battered. So I quit. Because I don't want to be battered, because I batter myself enough. There are other books out, like the one by a woman named Elizabeth Cronkite. I believe she's Australian. She took the Course out sentence by sentence and rewrote it. And it's beautifully done. And it's really an emotional course. So it's about getting to this state by following the heart instead of this arduous intellectual way. So there are other books, and there are other people that say they're leaders of the Course in Miracles, and I don't want to get into that argument because it's become a thing too, to argue over, just like all things, like churches. Are you in the right club? Well, I'm in the right club. You're in the wrong club. The Eye of the Eye is one of the later books by David Hawkins, who started with the power versus force. Absolutely astounding. The first 8 pages are called the prologue, and it is so astounding, just the first 8 pages will knock you over, because he describes what it's like in the state of nirvana. When he's beyond the body, he's no longer the body. He sees the body, he's not identified with it, but it is an astounding book. Hawkins has many, many wonderful videos on YouTube from every subject, from enlightenment to fear to love to discipline, everything you can think of. But this man has really, since the age of 3, when he had spiritual experiences, he tells you what it's like there. And in an uncomfortable way, he tells you, whether you like it or not, what hell's like. And all the layers of hell and the layers of purgatory. And man, if you doubt it, be ready for his discussion, because he tells you Dante's type of description. But he certainly describes to you how to get past all the levels. All of them. Very interesting. Now, I started my path in the 60s with Be Here Now by Arandes. And it's very intriguing to me because Be Here Now was one of the most influential books ever written. And the book ends with him on top of a picture of him on top of a bridge, and he's watching the water go underneath the bridge. And the last page of the book says, we're on a bridge and we're watching our life go by. These are not pretty metaphors. He's telling you how it is. Maybe mankind's not ready for this big picture, as he calls the CRISPR trip. Arandes calls it the CRISPR trip, because you get baked. There's no more you. You go beyond individuality. But anyhow, all of the great books, the Bhagavad Gita, the great sages end up with the same mentality at the end of the book, that you're not an individual. I'm not this. I'm starting to understand it. Through years of struggle, I'm starting to understand it. And one of the things I understood that started to help is you can't understand oneness with this. You can't understand it mentally. You understand it with this. A lot of people are talking now about the heart having a brain. I'm not going to go into details. It's been written plenty about. The heart has its own intelligence. When you ask the heart to start to feel the oneness, like you're in a group of 500 people, the heart will report back. This will tell you all the differences. So I went to see Arandes about 30-some years ago with a friend of mine. We went to Morgantown, and I had the privilege, because he had done so much for my life. We saw him speak, and I was really hung up on this question, and I wanted to ask him. I was being chicken because I was starstruck. I wanted to ask him about how can we all be having the same, how can we all be one mind when it seems like we're all separate? So I made up a story, a hypothetical, and I asked him. I said, I'm walking down the street with Karen. Me and Karen walking down the street. We've never been on the street before. I walk in this house and never been in there. I tell Karen, you stay here. I go in the house and I look to my left and I don't say anything, and I see a yellow broom and I walk back out. And Karen, I don't talk to her. Karen goes in the house, looks to her left. She sees yellow broom. She comes back out. We write down what we saw. We both write down yellow broom. This is not trivial. This is really significant stuff. This is the oneness versus the the mirage of individuality. I said, do you mean to tell me that we're all agreeing at the same time on what we see? And Ramdas said to me, yeah. And he freaked me out so much that I couldn't ask him another question, and I wanted to. It took me years to figure out. But he was right. There's one mind looking at that yellow broom. There's one mind looking at that Yukon forest. There's one mind looking at these star clusters. And it sure looked like there's a bunch of us, and we're out there with measuring tapes, and we can measure it. And it ain't so. And physics is learning it too. Physics calls it the zero field. They got to make it sound fancy. Lynn McTaggart's book called The Zero Field. They're backing up, backing up, backing up, backing up, finding out what the gurus knew 2,500 years ago. So anyhow, that was my one marvelous chance to speak with him. He's done so much for everybody, and the really interesting thing about Ramdas, of course, he had so many friends that were influential in the 60s, and he went and he gave up his position, was fired at Harvard, and went to India to study with his guru. And while there, he was spending a lot of time in meditation in a teepee or a little hut up in the Himalayas. And while there, being the Aries that he is, he started to feel like, I must be a coward. What am I doing in this hut over here in India when all my friends are on the front lines and anti-war demonstrations going on? And all this stuff's going on here, I'm doing nothing. He said, then he realized he was the one on the front line. And he was right. And because of him and his pioneering nature of Aries, he broke through the mental glass ceiling, if you will. And because of him, so many people followed. So that was a really neat thing about Ramdas. Next in line. I'm reading the end of this now. We talked about the stroke of genius a couple weeks ago. We watched the video of the neurologist, neuroscientist, Jill Bolte Taylor, and she in 1996 had a stroke, and she's well documented in a long TED Talk on YouTube where she had a stroke, but she did it in such a way that she was aware of what was happening as her left brain died and her right brain was alive. And I just finished her book. I'm finishing it now. It's took her 8 years to recover. And the left brain almost completely died. She had to relearn how to talk, relearn how to walk, relearn what this was for and that was for, while her right brain, which was perfectly fine, was in bliss. She was one with the universe and floating around in blissful states that we all hear about. And so she had a marvelous mother to help her, a smart mother, to help her get back online. As she started to get her left brain back online, what was interesting is she found out that the left brain is where you store all these awful memories of emotional bruises. So as she started to recover, she could decide, I don't want that memory anymore. So she didn't bring it back. I want that memory. That was good. Bring it back. I don't want that memory. Because she was an expert with neural pathways. So it's a marvelous book because she shows you, and she's a Taurus. She shows you very clearly, this is what the blissful world is like. It's right there. And what the prerequisite to it is, this part's got to get calm. Now you come up with 6 million different stories, whether it's music, whether it's drumming, whether it's meditation, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's doping, whatever you want to call it. Now, the people that are sending me messages and chats, I cannot comment on. So talk amongst yourself, but I'm sorry, I can't do the chat and talk with you, but feel free to talk together. If you have any questions for me, please write them down for later on. So, she's a remarkable book because she shows you, I'm coming back in this world, and she had to be pulled back. She didn't want to come back. Another thing that we see with Hawkins, Hawkins says there are a lot of people on this earth who have gotten to enlightenment and they left. They don't want to come back. He says at any given moment, there's about 17 people on the earth out of 7.5 billion who are enlightened. And they're here and they stay, and they're keeping us uplifted. The power of their mind is enough to keep 7.5 billion people above that line of despair. That's how powerful their minds are. Very complicated. So I really encourage you to read her book for many reasons. Really astounding woman. The next in line is the story of Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer, I was not a great fan of his. He wrote a book called The Power of Intention. I considered him to be a little bit light compared to the other deeper minds, such as Deepak Chopra and all. But then he came out one day, probably when Pluto was on him, and he wrote The Power of Intention. And he described the intention being the zero field, what Hawkins calls the field that's unmanifest, that turns into the manifest. And he says, in other words, get yourself quiet, surrender to it, and let this field work through you. We also call it the Holy Spirit. Let this field work through you, and it does everything automatically and perfectly. But it ain't you. How many times have you seen people that try to recreate their childhood? They try to recreate the Beatles. They try to recreate some kind of high they were on before, and you can never do it because each one was a fresh moment when it happened, and you can't go back and recreate it. You never could create it anyway because you can't create anything. That's the Course in Miracles. You can't create anything. All you can do is sit in the front seat with your little child, plastic wheel, go, ooh, and think you're driving while he's back there or she's back there doing all the job. That's what surrender means. Give up the fact that you think you can drive, because you can't. The reason you can't is because if you could, there would be more than one of us. And there isn't. But the ego doesn't want to handle that. The ego doesn't want to hear that. Oh, I'm here. I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. The secret to this book is admitting that you know nothing. That you know nothing. And let go. I have no plans today. I'm not lazy. I'm not going to listen to my aspirations. Same with the book by Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. I'm not going to listen to my reason tell me what I need to do today. I only listen to myself when there's inspiration coming through. That's when it works. When listen to me, you always fail because there's strain and struggle. The last half of tonight, I'm going to be quoting a lot of different pages from this book, which is just astounding. But the power of intention is sneakily heavy duty. It sneaks up on you. It's not simple. It's not PBS like his other travails were. The next book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, marvelous book, set the world on its edge. Eckhart Tolle is a brilliant Aquarian. He's been there. He's experienced. He has become the one. He's had to be babysat for several years to learn to eat again with a spoon, learn to walk again. This is symptomatic of people that transcend the body and find their larger identity, which is just astoundingly infinite. The great thing about Tolle talks about his path is about understanding what he calls the pain body. And all the pains that you have through life, or the bitching or complaining or bruises, those are the things that keep you excited or annoyed. And by not letting the pain body be fed, the pain body slowly starts to die. And when it dies, you come back and rest in the eternal present. So when you watch Eckhart Tolle, who's very, very relaxed and very, very calm, you can tell he spends a lot of time in deep meditation. And what's the one thing they all talk about? Every one of them talks about meditation. Because you're going directly to the field, which is the substrate of all this. Next on the list is A Course in Miracles, which is voluminous, very technical, 3 books, a book for the teachers, a book for 1 exercise per day for the year, and then the text. It's very complex. It is channeled from Jesus through a woman named Helen Schucman at Columbia University, who's now deceased. It came about because Helen, on the surface, Helen and her mates at the psychology department, whatever it was, weren't getting along. And they were tired of bickering. And they asked themselves, there's got to be a better way that we all can get along. And all of a sudden, she started channeling. Hello, this is A Course in Miracles. Please take notation. October 18th, 1965. And she channeled for 7 years. And I validated that date. And to me, it looked authentic. But the book is very repetitive. It's very, very deep. It twists it this way, it twists it that way, it twists it this way, twists it that way. Just complex, and each little piece that you entertain makes total sense. And it's all about forgiving everybody. It's all about forgiveness. And I'm not talking about Christianity forgiveness. Oh, I'm better than you, and boy, you know, I find it in my big heart to forgive you for what you did. The Course is, I forgive you for what you did not do, because you never did sin. There was no sin. All there ever was one of us. And we went off and we started to dream that we were separate. And then you saw from me what the zodiac does once the Aries is born and the separate ego is formed. Then it goes to the second stage, and the Aries says, well, I'll need to try these Taurus things. I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled. And the zodiac goes on to the 3rd stage, 4th stage, etc., trying to fulfill itself by becoming more of a complex being who is yet still separate until it finally gets back to the Pisces stage and the letting go, the surrendering. And as always, we're in good stead tonight because Mark is doing his background research work and plugging you guys with links to all these other marvelous channels and books. The Course is worth reading. I've been at it 30 years, and I know many, many people who picked it up and put it down for 20 years till they could get to it. Because you got to be ready to read it. And if you pick it up, yep, that's it. If you pick it up and put it down, don't feel bad, because that's really normal. The message is ultra, it's phenomenal, it's astounding, and it's all about forgiveness. And the forgiveness really means letting yourself off the hook. Everything you do is for yourself. And the big one, everything that you see is imagination. Everything. All of this. God did not create the world. We are presently. We are creating the world so we can hide in it. Why? Because we don't want God coming down and kick our butt since we left. The whole basis of the Course is that. We left God. We're going to get our butt kicked. We got to hide, so he created this world. Because of all our guilt, we project all this stuff, including everybody else. We see these other people, and they're not really there. Heavy duty. Heavy duty. I'm going to leave it there because it's heavy duty. Now, what's so beautiful is that the Virgo, Nick Arandes, took it apart and brought it down to earth for you as a Virgo. Here's this Virgo, and here's me pouring my heart out trying to get Virgos to understand to quit trying to fix things. And Nick totally absorbs the course. He's so brilliant, puts it in down-to-earth terms, and shows you how to quit fussing with stuff. Don't try to fix anything. You can't fix anything. I'm quoting him. Only the Holy Spirit can do it. That's why you surrender. And when you surrender, you do it through trust. And then you start to trust what we've always heard. I have my eye on you. I will give you what you need before you even know you need it. This is what Nick's all about. He's astounding. We'll get more into that. The final book is just unbelievable. And Jan has read it, and I think Karen has read it. It's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. I want to tell you a little bit about it because I think it's an astounding story. Michael Singer is in his 80s now, and he has a commune of sorts, a meditation commune in Florida. He's been there for a long time. Real nice guy. Real smooth Taurus. Tauruses are so easygoing, and they make you feel so relaxed and all. Well, Singer wrote this phenomenal meditation book called The Untethered Soul, and it became very famous, 15 years ago, on the New York Times. And he spent a life in deep meditation, and for whatever reason, he must be a very advanced soul, which you can see in astrology, I believe. And then what he did is he wrote a new book called The Surrender Experiment, which was a 40-year period, of which one of those years was the year he wrote The Untethered Soul. And the Surrender Experiment is about him and his meditative techniques and all, but he fortunately knew how to listen for the difference. This is where Jill Bolte Taylor comes in, between the ego talking and the higher self talking. Because the ego says, well, you better get the MBA because you need the MBA, and you got to update that card. It's going to devaluate in the next couple of years, all that BS. Versus God told him, go start to write billing software for hospitals. He said, what? He said, you heard what I said. He could tell. He could tell because he was refined enough to know it was not garbage. You see all these books about how to tell the difference between spirit talking to you and the ego talking. Well, if the ego is talking, there's hyperness, and there's reasons, and there's money involved. And if it's beautiful and fluid, and it's connecting us together with love, then it is higher spirit talking. And spirit told him to go write software in the 80s for medical billing. So he takes his tail over to Radio Shack, and he buys a TRS-80 computer, and he starts with his staff. He himself is a brilliant economist, and he starts to capture the market early, because if anybody gets if anybody gets software written for them first, it's defense departments and it's people with money. So he gets on the ground floor, he starts to write this phenomenal stuff from the very ground up, and the next thing you know, he's the name in medical billing, and Lord knows that they know how to bill people. As soon as you get a boo-boo, you got a bill in the mail, right? So he doesn't know why. He doesn't question it. And every time he needs somebody to help him, somebody comes out of the blue. So the book's all about surrendering, and everything comes to him. Listen to what I got to say. I don't want to hear it. Listen to what God says. He listens. That's what the whole book is about. So he builds and he builds and he builds. And he's making billions of dollars. And he doesn't care because he's in bliss all the time anyway. He's meditating, and people come and stay with him, and people leave and go. And all of a sudden, one day, he's getting so big, he's in the billions. They discover they got a corrupt employee. Yes, Pluto was going there for his son. I've already checked. The employee was stealing money. Tons of it. What does the FBI do real well? Come in with the clippers, clipped all the cables, picked up the monitors, put them in the truck, stopped you right now off the phone, just dismantled everything in the truck out of nowhere. They got you by then, right? So what does he do? He says, I don't worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it. Back to my meditation. Back to my meditation. So while they're going through all this court stuff and they're inspecting all this embezzlement, this heavy-duty stuff with the SEC or whatever it's called, and all these laws being broken, that's when he wrote The Untethered Soul. Didn't even tell you. When he wrote it, it was just a spiritual book. Then he comes back out of it. The FBI lets him off the hook. He was sinless. They nailed the guy, put him in jail for all his embezzlement. He went back to his money and went back to work. So that book is an astounding book because it talks about the continual faith that he had in never listening to America, CNN, Fox News, panic from commercials. Where do you need to be with Charles Schwab? All this junk and lies that we hear. He just keeps listening to God, which is what Gandhi did. He just keeps listening. He just keeps on shining. It's a beautiful book because he just keeps winning. And I'm not talking about Trump. We're going to win so much you're going to be sick of winning. I think people are sick of winning. You think? I'm sick of winning. So anyhow, that's what he's all about. So let's get into some of the phenomenal things going on with this guy. Okay. In his story, like I told you, he came from Puerto Rico, Nick Arandes. He was a stage comedian. He, interesting. He gave it all up. He was sitting in a library with 5 cents in his pocket. He was writing on napkins. He had no car. He had no money. And he said the basis of A Course in Miracles, because he's based in A Course, is to choose peace first. And when you choose peace first, the only thing you can do is surrender. He itemizes how he felt. He wanted to go out and get a job. See, he didn't stop. He still went out. He applied for work, but he didn't panic to go get a job. So that's how I deal with my Virgos now when I'm dealing with them. I try to get them from gotta get the dishes done, to gotta get the dishes done. We start off one step, we get to the next step. You see? Because when you get lower and lower and lower, and you have more and more victories from letting go, satisfied, letting go, didn't blow up, satisfied, then you're encouraged more and more and more and more to keep surrendering. And one of the things I do, which is very nasty, and I do with all my clients, I tell them, don't listen to anybody, including me. Now, maybe your mom is awful bright, or your dad, you may have listened to one or two things. But what I'm trying to say to people is, most of the stuff you're hearing is a bunch of junk. Most of it. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. So I've told you all along, the number one thing I want was somebody leaving my presence or office or reading is I want them to go home with a better sense of this. And then I don't care. I mean, I've done my job. It's the best thing I can give them. I work with Janice a lot. Janice tells me what she wants. We get her repaired right here, and she goes. Well, I can hear the motorboat going through. And then when she gets the motor sputtering a little bit, she comes back, we talk, we look at the charts, and we get that back in sync, and she goes. I don't want a client saying, oh, God, I got to go to a meeting tomorrow. What do I wear? Do I see the doctor? That's not where it's at. So, bear with me because this is unbelievable. He recites an awful lot of things about the course. I was taught that I needed to do something or needed to fix it. I've written a lot about Virgos, and they've got this incessant yapping on their shoulder. You got to fix it. It's wrong. It's broken. You got to fix it. You got to fix it. That's what they do. He has learned. One day he finally gave up. He said, following one day after another disappointment and another disappointment, he was working with all these new age writers, making CDs, making videotapes, mantras, and all this stuff, chanting, and he was just going nowhere. He said he finally gave up. It's an astounding story. He said, I'm not going to fix anything anymore. He said, one of the problems that we get into, I'm kind of paraphrasing what's throughout the book. We need a power that is greater than us. We can't do it. And that doesn't mean we need Fred the guru down the street. Maybe it's going to take the shape of Fred the guru. Well, you guys know this. You guys know this when you get quiet, when you tune out the junk, somebody appears in your life. Where the hell did he come from? Someone says something. Where'd they get that? You know what I'm talking about. That all comes when you surrender. Because it's all the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit talking. I don't have any idea what I'm saying. It's all the Holy Spirit talking. Same author to all of us. We're going to be nice and patient, actually. We're going to take it nice and easy. Okay. Using myself as an example right at this moment, I am trusting that if I keep my full awareness on God and not on any of the seeming challenges that are taking place in my life, trusting that everything unfolding however it's supposed to be, by maintaining my peace, I will be guided to what sort of action to take if needed at any given moment. Because everything around me is just an illusion. Putting your money where your mouth is when you start to live it. And one of the secrets I've learned to this living it through my clients, I just had one today who was in her 80s. A lot of failure takes place till you get to the point where you can start winning. And it just has to. And it's not failure. It's not. You're not ready till you're ready. You're just not ready till you're ready. And when you're ready, the door swings open. There are no others. There's the illusion of an outside world, a world that is filled with separation. It's not real. And the process is not only easier, it's actually natural. And even though most people think that by visualizing, this is where the secret comes in, which I have a lot of problems with, that by visualizing what they want, what they are doing is asking God for help. Or as some may say, they are co-creating with God. In reality, what they're saying is, God, Please let me do this on my own, will you? He makes a very fine distinction. That's what's so good about him being a Virgo in his book. He tells you the tiny difference between this and that. And it's really important. He talks about a vision board, but it's different than the way they talk about a vision board in The Secret. You see me? Or what the bleep is this? Whatever that movie was. His vision board is more of holding in mind because I know what's coming. Not testing God. Are you going to come through with this thing that I need? Because that's all based in lack. And it's not real. That's just illusion. 4749. Notice how everything was arranged for me. Okay. He's talking about all these things that he's doing, and he's living his life, and he's constantly letting things go, letting it go, letting that go, and all of a sudden things just start to work out, and he can then see at the end of the process that there's been a guiding hand all along watching this. He said that's one of the things about the Holy Spirit, because remember, the Holy Spirit is the other part of God that can interface with us. God can't interface with us because he doesn't even know we exist, because we're an illusion. We're not real. Heavy duty. The Holy Spirit deals with us, knows we're an illusion, yet deals with us at the same time. Is this making any sense? I'm getting a few when head goes like that, I'm assuming that's a yeah. I'm not getting many of these. I'm getting a couple dumb looks like, really? All right. You might work something out through your plans that something might work out, but when you give it to the Holy Spirit finds a way that everybody wins. Do you ever have a situation like that? Unbelievable. I remember at the time my wife and I were moving from Frederick, Maryland, all the way to Tennessee, 500 miles, hot summer day, 2 cats, 1 kid, barking dog, trying to get stuff in the van and all this. You know what that's like. The 500-mile trip, and we're $500 short. Honest to God. All the titles are signed, everything is right, and we're $500 from going, and we're broke. I couldn't believe it. And a woman walked in the house and said, "Here, my dad wrote you a check for $500. I said, "What?" It's a woman I didn't even know had heard my story. And she had just been out of town. And she must have told her dad, and that struck a nerve with him. And he said, "Here, give them this check." You've all had these stories. You've all had these stories. We need to live in that space. One of the things I wrote down, I think it's really important. Where did I put that? I think this is really important. We're going to end with Neptune transits. Interesting. I started to say to myself, what happens if you don't surrender? Well, we all hear about surrender. Well, obviously, we're spending 99% of our time not surrendering, so what are we doing? What Gurdjieff found out is we are reacting. We're robotic. Stimulus, react. Stimulus, react. We're not even alive. So thus you had the Gurdjieff-Uspensky way, which was very rigid, watching of yourself and watching your behaviors. But what I was trying to, I must have chopped this out. That's what it was. I was trying to differentiate between, we can't act the way Jesus acted and be like Jesus. You know, it's like somebody going up on the roof and telling us what it's like on the roof, and we're down here going through the actions of what they're doing, and we're going to get the same results because he's up there doing that. We don't act the same to achieve the same result. He's trying to describe to you what his environment is like. And he's trying to describe to you to surrender, not because you're going to learn to not judge because that's the right thing to do, but because judging is what gets you agitated. Judging gets you agitated. And also about attachment, I've been learning a lot from David Hawkins about attachment. The attachment that the Buddhists talk about so much is not the problem. Attached to sex, attached to money, attached to whatever houses. It's the juice David Hawkins talks about. You don't have to give up your attachment. You have to give up the juice, the thrill that you're getting from the attachment. Once you give out, once you realize, what kind of juice am I getting out of this? Like this hateful argument. What kind of juice am I getting? Once you give that up, then you give up the arguing. So it all keeps coming back to these people told us the way, but we're cowardly and we're weak, and we have to do it in a group and hold hands and kumbaya because we don't have enough strength individually. But they're describing all these techniques that are for us, all these forgiveness techniques, letting things slide. They're done, so we are free. How many people you see talk about forgiving when they realize they forgave, they felt much better? Because whatever somebody did, they did it. Why allow your anxious system get all stirred up again just because of it? So I did chop off a bunch of stuff here. Okay. He says, Nick says, the more goals you set, the more blocks you place between you and your peace. Well, when you set a goal, you automatically set your mind up in a fight situation. Am I there? And I'm not there. How come I'm not there? Well, if you wouldn't have eaten that ice cream cone, we could have been there. Well, if you would have rode, fast, you get in a fight. What happened? Instead of taking it as it is. Because we keep thinking that we know what's best for us. And one of the first lessons, I told you, the Course in Miracles has a 360-page book that's one lesson per day, 365. And the first lesson is, we do not know what anything is for. Nothing. So what it does, it starts to unprogram us. Because what we start to see is that when we look at an object, we don't even see the object. We see what we've known about the object in the past. So in effect, all we're ever seeing is the past. I'm going to bring us out of this really heavy-duty, complex stuff and just read a couple of things here because it could just get too gooey. And we can talk about all our experiences collectively. Oh, you want to flip over backwards? Listen to this one. This is from A Course in Miracles. You think that you hold against your brother what he has done to you. But what you really blame him for is what you did to him. Exactly right. Yeah, think of how many people are pissed off at you, but it's really something they did. It's an amazing story there. A couple more. He loves this process because he doesn't have to figure out anything. I think I'm going to stop right there with that. Once, when he prays, he just says to God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing my best. I know how to tie my shoes. I know how to make this saw run. But I surrender to you. Show me a better way to look at this situation. Not to pray to give me something, because that invites the fact that I lack something, which I don't lack. Please give me another way to look at this situation. That usually brings a solution. So, it's a long story. It's very complex. It's at the heart of all these books. And if you look around on American TV and the movies, all you see are all these lines. You see all of these false images that if you're this way and you're the badass, you beat that guy up and you get the girl, that you win. And he's not that way. So why don't we let it run? Moonjani, I just saw somebody talking about that, yeah. The microphones are open. If you care to talk, just flip it on and start talking. We're going to let this go through to YouTube until somebody tells a big dirty story, and then we'll stop it. Karen, where's Karen? Yes, dear.
I have two things. There's a book I had to read years ago by C.S. Lewis called The Great Divorce. It's literally a bus ride to hell. And it's not what anybody would think of. But if you really want to understand being stuck, that book highlights it. And the funny about the book is I've loaned it to several people and I always have to go buy another copy. I never get it back because it's not a fast read. I mean, in the beginning, you're bored to death. And then all of a sudden, you start getting what they're talking about. It's another perspective on this same topic. But it's not deep. But it really highlights so many things, and I don't want to spoil it because if people really get it and read it, you're going to be fascinated.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is this is happening at the collective level. This is happening at the collective.
The other comment, and I wrote this way back when you first started talking because it's what came, and that was we've been taught to do unto others as you would have them treat you. The truth of the matter is that is how we're treating ourselves.
Mm-hmm. When you treat them, you are treating yourself directly. Correct. Instead of a behavior modification.
And that is, to me, so powerful. Mm-hmm. And we don't, if we just did that one thing.
That's the one thing. That's what he told us. That's 101.
It would change our life.
We're still trying to get 101. Thank you very much. Yes, Ginger, you were exactly right about Moorjani's book. I read that book. Tell us about
it. Anita's book talks about how she got cancer. She talks about, the most important thing that she talks about is how her actions led to her cancer and how the healing process gave her the enlightenment of what she did to bring the situation on. Of course, everybody likes the part about what she talks about the afterlife, and the point that really stood out to me was her experiences were very similar to me on the other side too. But I think the most important thing that she talks about is her lessons that she learned. For instance, she had gained this, and a lot of it was from mass media. A lot of it was influences that she did not. All right, we disappeared. All right, I'm going to keep talking. All right, so she, a lot of the things like she had this fear through different circumstances in her life that led her to a fear of cancer. So she did what most of us do. We started eating an all-organic diet. She was avoiding anything that could possibly cause cancer. And what she realized after her experience was that what she thought she was preventing cancer, but she was actually creating it because of the fear of it. And I think the most important takeaway is that whatever we put our attention on comes, period.
Exactly. And that's how, well, I'm anxious to see what Elke finds with this when she reads it. That's how David Hawkins' book called Healing and Recovery. I told you he healed himself of pancreatic cancer and all kind of stuff, diabetes, and he did it by laying down on the bed. Now, he put his money where his mouth is. He went into deep meditative states. He didn't give any thought or definition to what the doctor said, what was going on in the body, and what he did by doing so. He returned to the state which was his normal state, which is the God state. And in the God state, everything's perfect and healed.
That's exactly.
That sounds really simple, but that's where medicine is heading. Go ahead.
That's exactly the point that Anita was trying to make.
Right. Exactly. That you know, wondering what these poor cancer patients have to go through, and they're pumping all this stuff in them, and they're feeling bad, and you know they're feeling bad and guilty because I brought this on and I'm making it worse. And oh my God, just a horrible situation. And thank God a lot of us are starting to turn the corner and help out. Okay, thank you, Ginger. That was really good. Yes, Elke.
I wanted to tell you guys about 2 books, and I know this one is a little bit out there, but it's still good. It's called We the Arcturians by, I put it in there, by Dr. Norma Milanovic. And this book really explains the different dimensions and what it is about the illusion, and it really like helps you to wrap your mind around it, how it works. It's quite complex. But then there's another one that they wrote too. She wrote, co-authored it with some other people, and it's called The Truth Shall Set You Free. And what people don't understand is that they talk about the secret and how you manifest, but there's a whole bunch of other laws, you know, in the universe. They're called universal laws, that they are unshakable. You cannot change them. And it is the most amazing book. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. It's hiding on me right now. I have it, but truly, truly amazing. And it gives you a real baseline for how everything works and how the grand illusion works and everything. It's just really, really cool. And I'm looking forward to, you know, reading the Hawkins book, because when you work on healing, you always push the envelope. And like I never associate with any diagnosis or anything, because that actually makes it happen, right? Unmute yourself, Karen.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote, Elke, you name it, you claim it.
That's right.
I mean, if you say I have, you have it.
But people don't understand how, you know, you say this to them, but if you read some of these basic premise books, especially the one, The Truth Shall Set You Free, you go, oh, okay, now I get it, you know.
Suzanne, I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I want to tell you something. As a matter of fact, I'm going to stop right here. Let Suzanne go, then I'll tell you what I got to say. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yeah, just real quick, and I've said this before. These are brilliant people in the sense of them touching base with reality in the other sphere and helping us in pragmatic terms understand certain things. But until one really gets it on their own experience level, it's not really their own. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's great to read all these great minds and thoughts, but your own experience is what really carries you onward. And I just want to say one thing real quick. And I see it in the New Age community a lot. Where does action come in with blending with the higher self? I am the one who looks under the rock and in my own Scorpio way, truth saying that people don't want to hear certain things. Does that mean I'm not aligning with my higher self, or does that mean I am aligning with my higher self
It's a very touchy question.
Approach, I don't know. But too many people will sit back and let atrocities happen in front of them, saying that, no, I don't want to get out of my bliss, or I don't want to get out of this oneness. But right action at the right time can create miracles as well.
You always got to take your brain with you.
That's a very touchy subject. You're exactly right. It needs to be very clearly defined, and that's the thing Nick Arandes does perfectly. And what he does is he talks about, if you're inspired to do it, do it. Because that's not really you doing it. That's you plus the universe doing it. And if you're not inspired, then it's coming from the ego.
And the test too with the ego, one last thing. If you in any way are expecting something back from something or some type of recognition, that's not what it's all about. Exactly
right. Eric, I'll be with you in 1 second. I want to thank you, Suzanne. I want to mention this one thing here, and this is really interesting. I wrote down, and I lost this earlier. When you're in sync with God, and I'm not saying I'm some guru here and I'm in sync with God. We just talk on this show. So that's just how it goes. But when you're in sync with God and you're trying and you're surrendering, then you don't have to think about obedience. You know, I did all these charts on Iran and the Quran. I went way back, and that's what the Middle East is about. Somebody said it, damn it, and you better obey it or this. That's where their mindset is. They came out of the Pluto and Taurus generation. But you don't have to be in obedience, because you're already one with it. Look how much angst would come out of the world, would come out if we'd stop worrying about chasing the infidels. And this also goes for what I wrote about not behaving X, Y, and Z. I watch so many shows, and they start by, she was a good Christian, God-fearing woman. And I go, oh my God, poor her. Yeah, Erica, go ahead.
I just wanted to share something that some realizations that I had recently that are more from a sort of a Hindu point of view. I follow this Swami here on the West Coast, and he teaches from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's all about, you know, us being here and trying to take care of our karma and figuring out, like, why are we creating this karma, or did this karma come from a past lifetime? And so we're trying to figure out how to atone for that so we don't have to go through it again, and all of this sort of thing. That's basically the way that he looks at life.
How can you figure it out?
Well, basically what he says that the best way to do it is to always think in every moment what is of deeper value. First of all, you have to really realize, you know, honestly with yourself, what your values are and what your deep values are, and get all that out of the way. And whenever you make a decision, no matter what it is, big or small, just always think of what is the deeper value. Another thing to be constantly doing is working on things that cultivate our faith. To do impersonal charity, you know, things that nobody needs to know about, that helps our karma.
All these things have their value. They all do. Everybody.
Well, it all comes down to exactly the same thing, though. That's
right. We're all chipping away. We're all chipping away at those obstacles to what's really deeply there. Exactly.
And one more thing, he said that don't be afraid of suffering. Suffering helps us burn off our karma, and whenever we suffer, in a way we should be grateful for it and accept it, but whenever we have joy, we should offer that to the Creator, and in that way we raise our, you know, our level of consciousness. What
Hawkins talks about is just be yourself, and your karma will cause you. It will propel you through life by itself. It will propel you by itself automatically, because you are this and you are that, and you're not this and you're not that. And
they claim that you can affect your karma, and you can work on it.
They're both the same thing. Hawkins said that the best way to really make big leaps in your karma is to remove the obstacles to love. That's the centerpiece. That's the centerpiece for Course in Miracles, which is to remove the obstacles to you, to the love getting through, or to remove the obstacles from you to see your real nature, which is love. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marilyn. You've been waiting.
Thank you. I have found myself on my knees, so to speak, here recently, in that it's a crossroads, a very important crossroads. And my intuition is what I want to be my guide, my GPS.
That's it.
And there's a movie out, by the way, called GPS. So if you see it at a local theater, please go to it. It's fascinating. This guy was obsessed with his intuition, and he decided to document it by interviewing important people who had something to say about the subject.
That's wonderful. And that's in the collective now. And I'll remind you why. The collective Uranus-Pluto conjunction in 1965 brought about all the Medicare and the women's rights and all that stuff. But the meaning of that degree, where that happened at, was that we all need to start being directed by our GPS, our inspiration, our intuition.
When you're seated in the captain's chair of your life,
right.
When you are the captain, when you're the creator of your life experience, you develop a trust. And that trust in spirit is led by your intuition.
So therefore, the creator is the intuition. Or as Wayne Dyer says, the power of intention.
It is the sense. Your intuition is a sense.
It's the same thing. Exactly.
And you can sense your own divinity by allowing the trust in your intuition.
It's all the same thing. Exactly. Exactly the same.
In other words, you say, I know, and the answer appears because you trust in your own knowing.
And yes, thank you. And what's so interesting is that 1965 conjunction got tested in 2014, 15, 16. And that's why we're starting to see the spin-off from all that. And people are saying, oh, we failed so much with voting rights and black rights and all that. But we're also seeing the spin-off of we failed to make the breakthrough with our intuition, and thus it's breaking through now. Look how many people now will tell you that. It's just everywhere. Look at how many healers are just popping out of the woodwork. They're just everywhere. It's popping out. It's big. It's huge. And we got to keep pushing it and fertilizing it.
I found one book that I really enjoyed years ago. And when I discovered this book, I was involved with a group that was studying group that was studying the Abraham Hicks material. And I attended and I read the first page in this book struck me so deeply. I shared it with the group. And when I did, my left leg started vibrating. I started shaking. I was so overcome.
Great.
And the name of the book is called You Are God, Get Over It. And it's by Story Waters. And he was from England. And he was a young man at the time in his 30s when he wrote the book. And it was a book that gave me the courage to accept the darkness within is my divinity. You cannot push against the dark and be aligned with spirit. Your light and your dark are your divinity. That's
exactly right. What other thoughts do you all have about tonight's subject, which was about surrender? What do you have in your mind about your experiences about the thought around surrender? Let's hear from some other folks too. Janice, tell us. You and I work closely. You've been having a lot of success with this. We've watched closely. You've let go of a lot of stuff, and you're keenly aware of how it just comes back to check mark, check mark, check mark.
You just have to let it go. If you don't let it go and you keep pushing it down, it comes back. It keeps coming back. So I guess I've learned the hard way a couple of times over and over again to just allow it. Just allow it to be.
What kind of example could you give us about it, about letting it go? What kind of thing?
Geez, I don't know. You know, the frustrations and worries of, for instance, selling a property, like what I'm trying to do. And the small things, you know, they keep getting to you and they keep mounting, and, you know, you can worry. And eventually you just have to let it go, because it's going to be what it's going to be, regardless of what you do. And however stressed out you get over it, just doesn't matter.
So you surrender and it works out.
Back into yourself and just allow God to help you with it, or the Holy Spirit, or whomever it is you pray to.
Yeah.
And believe me, it will be what it's going to be, and it will be the best for you.
Ginger, what are you finding?
Well, my greatest experience was in November. In November, I found myself thinking I was in perfect health, not afraid of too much, thinking life was going great. And one day I end up in ICU for about 3 weeks fighting for my life. Mm-hmm. And that was a big lesson about surrender, mm-hmm. because there was nothing I could do about it. At one point I was laying there going, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the next 24 hours or not, and neither did anybody else. It was me and it was God.
It was you and Pluto and God.
Me and Pluto and God, yes.
Mm-hmm. And that happened to a lot of Libra people during that time.
It was just...
But you had to go through a dark night of the soul, right?
Oh, that was a real dark night of the soul. I think I'm just now starting.
But you found your power. You found your power.
Yes.
And that's what the United States, the U.S. is going through that, but we haven't found our power yet. So half of us are trying to find somebody to shoot. Because when we shoot them, then we'll be okay. Oh, Waldo.
I used to be about control until November. And that experience where I didn't have any control whatsoever, I was so weak that I had to depend on someone else to sit me up in bed if I slid down. Yep. That was vulnerability. That was surrender, because I had no choice.
I got to a point with open heart surgery in 2009, and I was in 2 weeks, and they were poking me with this and sticking this here and doing that there, and I was starting to break me mentally, and I surrendered one night. I just said, nurses, do what you want whenever you want to do it. And everything just became easy.
I came to that point too. There was a point where I just said,
thank God it exists. And yes. I hope that we can find ways. I hope that we can find ways to implement that throughout the culture, incorporated, because it's not really a very well accepted term, surrender. I even think we need to find a better word, compliance or whatever. But I think we're doing it. Don't you think, Waldo?
What I think it's a surrender. Surrender sometimes is not an option, because you surrender or you will be too putting down anyway. Surrender is a big word. because I don't know if any of you happen in an accident or any type of fatality. At the end, you surrender. It's always the same thing, you know. The soul knows what he wants. He will get you there. You know, you come over here to live the experience, and we think we got everything in control, but we never have control of anything. We just always surrender.
Exactly right, and that's why I told you I would end the evening. Thank you, Waldo. I told you I'd end. I told you I. Did you have something else?
No, just I got an experience one time in Germany, for example, when I fell from the building, you know, and I was awake. I know what happened, but I had to surrender for people to take me to whatever the hospital they want to take me, and do whatever they had to do with me so I could live. I mean, in that moment, someone knows what had to do. He said, keep calm, you know, just let it happen.
Yeah.
So what the lady said, just let it happen means just you're not the one in that driving seat like you think, you know, somebody else is driving the car.
Exactly right. That's why I wanted to end tonight with a talk about Neptune, because all we've been talking about all night is a Neptune thing. Neptune is surrender, and when it comes over people usually don't have a very good time. It's coming across my Mercury in the next year, and I'm looking forward to it because I've already had it and I understand it. But the thing about Neptune is, if you don't, it's also true for people with a lot of 12th house planets. If you don't surrender, you're in trouble. Now, I was thinking about...
Neptune is trine to Jupiter right now.
It's trine to Jupiter?
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, that's excellent. That's the symbol for spiritual growth. But anyhow, when Neptune comes over you, it amplifies the part of you that's already spiritually based. And if that part of you is small and it's unknown, Neptune will confuse you, because Neptune will not support you in your worldly goals, or your worries about money, or your worries about getting this car, getting this job. It won't support you because those things are not real to Neptune. That's why they go unsupported and they fall away. Why do people have so many affairs and scandals when Neptune's around? Because they misunderstand what's happening. When Neptune is calling you and you're not used to its voice, what you hear is, that ain't working, that ain't working, this stinks, there's no satisfaction here, this doesn't work in my life, that's not worth a darn here. And you end up becoming so discouraged about everything in your life, they say, hell with it. And my famous phrase is, you take the Harley and you go Route 66 out to Las Vegas, and you get your shades on, and you want to have a rebirth. Well, you're not going to have one out there, and if you have an affair, that's going to blow up on you too. So when Neptune hits you, and you do like the Easterners do, and you welcome the time, and you do like Yogananda did, you cry to your mother because she's taking away with work chores the time that you could be meditating, then you understand what the proper use of a Neptune transit is. So when Neptune is around, and it's been all over the United States chart the last 5-6 years, which is why we've had the magnificent clown shows, because we cannot deal with that refined level where everything's got to have makeup all over it, and the lights spinning, and the things blowing up, and the cars spinning through the air. We don't know how to go towards the refined. Neptune takes you towards the refined, towards the essence, not the opposite. So when Neptune comes over you, it does not have to be good or bad. It can be excellent if you assist it with getting rid of the false, allowing the false girders and forms to fall away because they're not real. And then what you're left with is just essence. And in every one of these books, they all talk about that you finally arrive at a state where it's just pure essence. And it's a state of being that you come to. And what I really liked about what I read in here is he says that in the very end, what matters is the state that you're in. That's what people hear. That's what they see. That's what they feel, the state that you're in. Not what you're saying, not what's on your door, not what's on your letterhead. And he says you win, win, win the more you surrender because there's less and less of you in the way. Go ahead, Elke.
But you have to bring the body with you. We are here in the physical. Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, but a lot of people misunderstand that, but they're like, you have to bring your body with you because we are human beings and this is our structure. Our physical structure is part of it. So it's not just in the head, it's the whole thing.
You can't bring the baggage with you.
Well, I think you're exactly right because I see these people that think they got cancer and they're going to ignore their body and on my body. Next thing you know, they die. They're doing exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the opposite. Well, I really appreciate you all being here tonight. I think we're trying to do some new things. I think it's some new exciting material because we're going to get into astrology here and there. No doubt about it, but I think that we had to open these doors. I got the confirmation the other night. I got asked by Stephen Popland if he could be on the show again. I said, Stephen, he's in Austria right now and in Germany. I said, Stephen, anytime you want. So he's coming back sometime in September to do another show on regression. His second book is out. So we're having lots of fun. Let me say good night to the YouTubers. Good night, YouTubers, and thanks for joining us.